Hello, my name is Father John Broussard, and this is answering your questions that you have submitted. So one of the most popular questions that I have been asked over the years is this question of the problem of evil. Why does God allow there to be evil things to happen to good people? Why does, I pray, I ask God for help, and yet bad things still happen, especially with this coronavirus going all around all over the world. Why would God allow that to happen? Why would God allow these things to affect my spiritual life? Now so many people who would want to receive Holy Communion can't, and there's a big question as to why that is. I think that this is a very good thing to reflect on. Why does our Lord allow certain things and then He doesn't allow other things? We believe by our faith that our Lord, He would allow something like this to happen because ultimately He knows that He's going to be able to bring a greater good out of it. Now, whenever we are considering what God is doing in all of these situations and circumstances we find ourselves in, these crosses and sufferings that we all end up having to deal with, it's important for us to reflect on them in the light of faith and in the light of how is this going to bring me closer to God? How am I going to use this to help grow my faith and to help me to know and understand better? Many of the saints of the church have actually talked and addressed this question before, and one of the most prominent of these saints would be St. Thomas Aquinas, and he compiled several different theologians. He compiled them to address this question, and he came up with actually three things that sort of answer this question of the problem of evil. Why is it that God allows these things? The first thing that he said was that God allows evil to bring about a greater good, which is, as we've said, But that in and of itself doesn't really answer the question in its totality. It doesn't answer it enough, because you could say, well, why doesn't God just bring about a greater good with a greater good? There has to be more to it than that, right? So there's a second reason why God allows evil. He allows it to bring about a greater good, but also to bring about a good that is altogether different from the good that was lost. And so it's not just taking one good and replacing it with the same, because that wouldn't account for why God was allowing it. It is indeed an altogether different good than the one that was lost. And so God showing forth His goodness and His power to be able to do that. But even that doesn't fully answer why God would allow that, because it doesn't completely account for why God wouldn't do it another way or allow it through His power in another way. The third and final reason that Thomas Aquinas gives us for this reason is actually the most important, which is that God allows this because the good that is brought about is a greater good. It's altogether different. And also, this good could not have been if this evil did not take place. And so we think about the greatest example of this, right? The sin of Adam and Eve. God allowed that sin to take place because of the good that came about from it, was the Word becoming flesh and our redemption and our relationship with God being raised up with Him in such a way that it had never been known before. God taking on our humanity. And so with these perspectives in mind, we can start to look at our faith maybe a little bit differently, insofar as we look at it in terms of how is God bringing about within my own personal spiritual life a greater realization of my relationship with Him, something that I can actually grow closer to Him throughout this hardship. Yes, even a hardship like missing out on something as good as Holy Communion. How can I use that? How can God use that to draw me in closer to Himself? If we can see that, and if we can begin to focus our meditation on that, on our reflection on using this as an opportunity to grow in appreciation of the spiritual goods that we do have. And once, God willing, we go back to the reception of Holy Communion and the full practice of our faith, we have a greater gratitude for the great gifts that God has given to us, and that relationship with Him is all the more deeper. Maybe our souls will actually be saved. Certain souls will be saved because of this cross that we've been asked to endure. This suffering is actually something that we would not want to go to waste. It would be something that we would be very remiss if it went by us and nothing changed, and nothing was different. So this, and any suffering or difficulty, struggle that we endure in our life or in our family, can all be looked at in this light. How is God going to bring about a greater good, and how is my faith going to grow? How am I going to grow closer to God through this? Very important way in which we keep our peace, our interior recollection, by focusing on the goodness and the power of God. That no matter what happens, no matter what struggle or difficulty I might be dealing with or enduring, God is always more powerful. Thank you.